Nursi and Rabindranath on the ideas of the spiritual and the relationship of the spiritual with science and technology, or the ideas of progress. Scholastic theology has made significant intellectual contributions to the development of modern science and technology. Even the Middle Ages is considered as the dark ages of bigotry. Theology had prepared the ground for the advancement of enlightenment and scientific ideas by evolving the notion of a law of the universe. Much of the initial exploration of modern natural science was guided by this quest to trace laws which govern the operation of perfect universal orders, which provided everything from the wings of a fly to the grand galaxies of the universe. The material progress and advancement of science have resulted in material explanations being put forward for many natural phenomena which are so far eluded any rational explanation. Moreover, the manifestations of this progress in natural sciences comes to have a tangible impact on the lives of humanity in a tremendous scale, especially after the Industrial Revolution. The response of theology and spiritual idealism to these radical challenges happening around them was not normal. From the very initial stages, there was a section which could perceive nothing but abandoned destructiveness of materialism in the changes which scientific and technological progress was bringing to the lives of human beings. But there were alternative voices too, which had a different take on the growth of science and technology. They caused a different path in their attempt to make sense of scientific and medical progress. Nursi and Tagore, whose ideas the paper is intending to explore, had a view which was quite different from the typical conservative response. Both of them tried to locate the progress of science and technology within the realm of spiritual progress of the humanity. For Nursi, the progress in natural sciences has conclusively demonstrated of the existence of a law-governed universe whose perfect order and harmony, according to him, makes the existence of a benevolent creator self-evident. Tagore, too, the philosopher poet and the first Nobel laureate of India, on the side of convergence, had similar views as he maintained that the unification of the whole human race through the science and technology is linked to the spiritual advancement of the world. He too perceived the presence of a force that builds up an organized universe, which seemingly unruly and disconnected elements of nature. It would be an intellectual endeavor worth taking to compare how both Nursi and Tagore responded to the advance of Western rationality and material progress, while critiquing the individual nature of capitalist law. For millions of followers worldwide, Nursi was the renewal, who was interpreted the Quran in accordance with the demands of the day. He shifted the focus of conflict between Islam and modernity away from scientific progress and technological advancements. In his scheme of thought, science and modernity were never created. Science had its place in his thought as a helping tool for the advancement of humanity's spiritual efforts. Nursi himself developed an interest in sciences, and it is not that he has studied natural sciences extensively, and he was engaging in natural sciences from the very beginning of his intellectual endeavor. And it is from this engagement that his thoughts and ideas about science have developed. And Nursi, it is also noted that he stood for the adoption of a teaching method in which both natural sciences and theology play an equal part. And his thought was developed in the material background of an increasing influence of secular materialistic ideology across the world. So there was a kind of response that was happening across the world, wherever in the colonial period, in the imperialist period, wherever there was a clash between the colonial advance of Western materialism and that of the civilization that of India or Turkey. This kind of an engagement was happening, and a challenge was coming up from the West in terms of the colonial expansion. And there was no way left but to engage with these questions. And Nursi's distinction is that, and Tagore also, I find the same kind of a distinction, that they have tried to advance the notion of science not by rejecting science, but by contemplating a role for it within the larger scheme of the spiritual progress. Nursi's vision of the divine as the transcendent sacred imbues all beings. Man has to read the world as a text of the divine, from which he will reach the desired conclusion. So there is a scope for individual agency in this investigation. It was essential for human beings to surrender before the God and act in his name. The man who surrenders himself to God frees himself from all fetters and bonds. To characterize God as a cosmic book or the created book throws up exciting possibilities as far as the understanding of the message of the divine is concerned. The moment non-verbal factors are indicated as messages to be interpreted, they cross the spatio-temporal limitations and linguistic boundaries. It frees the message from its finite fixed meanings and releases it to the realm of open investigation. But Nursi tries to limit the kind of investigation which is possible by saying that man is to find the meaning of God and the signs of God in the book of creation. But unlike the already revealed verbal interpretation, it's for each one of us to find this hidden treasure. It becomes the duty of each person to become intellectually independent while being devoted to God, but search independently. That is the duty of each person. The critique of modernity as being unapologetically anthropocentric is nothing. In the Abrahamic theology, the human being occupies a place of pride as the best among gods. Yet, Nursi tries to put this anthropocentrism in a different plane altogether, in which he prohibits man from wearing the clothes of God. He imagines no greater role in human self than as a mirror to reflect the divine attributes. Just like the darkness is the absence of the light, but whose presence is essential to make sense of the light. According to Nursi, human self is that imperfect, illusory entity whose larger goal remains attaining to him. According to Nursi, Islamic sciences derive their origin from the twin sources of nature and Quran. Nature or God appears as the category often employed in the philosophy to denote all that is created. The corresponding concept of Indian philosophy, which Tagore remembered, is that of Jagat. In some philosophical systems, the created or the creature is attributed a certain level of independence from the creator. In other systems, it reflects the creator. By treating nature or world as a source of knowledge, Nursi could establish that endeavoring to enhance our understanding of the world will only add or complement the knowledge explicated in the Holy Book. It is to be made clear in the outset that Nursi believed in the supremacy of the Holy Book. He believed that a stage will come when all sciences will turn to the truths of Quran. To cite his own words, in the future when the intellect, science and technology prevail of a certainty, that will be the time when Quran will be in ascendancy. So his aim was to create a science with Islamic foundations. Though it has not materialized yet, his proposition is interesting in the context of innumerable challenges faced by Eurocentric sciences in the postmodern world. Nursi assigns a propagandic value to the sciences as he says that in the future, the immaterial sources of civilization and material progress and truth and justice will defeat and rout the enemy in place of weapons and sword. So there is an emphasis on the utility of science and technology in advancing faith. Nursi and Tagore shared a quite different environment as he was belonging to a very different atmosphere where Britain had already colonized India. And he was one of those intellectuals who had come in this intense conflict between Indian philosophy on the one hand and that of Western advanced materialism on the other hand. So it was the heyday of colonialism and imperialism. And imperialism was on its expansion worldwide. And none could ignore the unprecedented advances of materialism and material values, buttressed by the immense advancement in science and technology in the Western Europe. The advanced societies in the West emerged as powerhouses of power, both political and ideological, with even their arch enemies adopting their own values to counter it. So even the fight against the British involved adopting their own values. That was a challenge. That's why Rabindranath wrote the book, The Un-British Rule in India. British rule in India was criticized because it was un-British. So even to counter West, we had to adopt the values of the West. So there was a serious challenge which was posed to the self, the identity of the self. This was there in every post-colonial society. Tagore also faced this challenge, but I have found some similarities in the way both of them, both Nursi and Tagore, has addressed this. India was under colonial subjugation, and the many brilliant minds of that period had come in contact with the Western world in which they had to engage. And they engaged with modernity and reached different conclusions in the process. Among them, Tagore was a person who was exposed to the Indian philosophical thought from the childhood. Coming from a family of Brahma Samaj, Tagore came into contact with Upanishadic thoughts and Vedas at a very young age, which had profoundly influenced his perception. Later he came in contact with the sciences and Western philosophy, which too had left an indelible impact on him. The thoughts of Tagore emerged from his attempt to reconcile these two. Science and spirituality went hand in hand in his work. Spirituality was seen as a tool to spread oneself into the realm of the beyond. Science too did nothing but reveal this cosmic majesty to the human mind. Tagore remained open to the ideas of progress and universals. It was not very difficult for him to derive these ideas as they are pretty given in the Indian philosophy. The Upanishads contain an exhortation to attain the divine by identifying it in the world. Like Nursi, Tagore also considered the questions of nations, nationalism, and heated discussions about political boundaries as transient and less fundamental to the course of human enlightenment. Being in unison with the Creator was his prime concern. This could not be achieved without submitting himself to the Creator and the ego of one before the Creator. Since nature was his creation and he manifests himself in his creation, subduing of nature was not to be the goal of enlightened human being. In his book Sadhana, Tagore says that the West seems to take pride in thinking that it is subduing nature. For him, the perception of the world as prostrate and adverse to be subdued is the product of the city world mentality, which has its roots in the Western classical civilization. For him, nature, in the nature of its creator, is benefactor to humankind, and the coexistence is more important than subjugation. If one has to subjugate anything, it is not nature, it is one's own ego. Here the thoughts of Tagore meet very much with Nursi. Nursi advocated the rejection of the human ego for its unison with the Creator. He criticized the anthropocentrism of the material sciences. One can find a similar vein of thought in Tagore, where he advocates shedding of both ego and one pure nature. Like Nursi, Tagore kept a great interest in sciences, as he himself has stated, that I am not a scientist. But from childhood, my strong desire to enjoy the rasa of science comes. He was open to the world outside. Perceiving the divine for him was not an exercise of detaching oneself from the world. On the other hand, Tagore tried to reconcile the seemingly irreconcilable. Their thoughts are of much relevance in the present era, where post-colonial societies are trying to stand on their own feet and engage in intellectual efforts to construct an episteme.